The cries in the dark. The world was broken. Fires burned in the distance. Black smoke covered the stars. Rubble and dust filled the air. Broken machines and fallen buildings stood like skeletons on the battlefield. It was a place where no life should exist. But Sergeant Jace Marlowe was still breathing. He moved carefully through the ruins. Every step he took made a soft crunch under his boots. He should have left hours ago. His mission was finished. The human army had pulled back. But something deep inside Jace told him to stay a little longer. Something was not right. Then he heard it. It was not a sound he expected. It was soft, small, a broken cry, almost like a whisper, but it cut through the smoke and noise like a knife. Jace froze. He turned his head, listening. The cry came again, weak, frightened. Without thinking, he moved toward the sound. The deeper he went, the darker it became. Fires still burned here and there, but the shadows were thick. Broken beams leaned across the streets. Shattered glass crunched under his feet. He knew it was dangerous. Enemy scouts might still be hiding nearby, but he could not walk away. The cry grew louder. He stepped into a half-destroyed building. Inside, under a broken piece of wall, he saw her. She was tiny, barely the size of a human child. Her skin was a soft violet color, covered in ash and dirt. Her golden eyes stared up at him wide with fear. She had small horns on her head like delicate crowns. Her arms reached out weakly. Jace's heart twisted. She was alone. Abandoned. Helpless. He looked around quickly. No traps, no soldiers, no signs of an ambush. Just one scared, wounded child. He dropped to one knee. Slowly, carefully, he reached out his hand. The girl flinched at first, but when Jace whispered softly, she stopped shaking. After a long moment, she reached back. Her tiny fingers touched his glove. "You're safe now," Jace said, though he was not sure she understood. He lifted her gently into his arms. She was light, like a bundle of feathers. She clung to him, burying her face in his chest. Then he heard another sound. Footsteps. Lots of them. Jace cursed under his breath. Enemy soldiers. They were coming fast. They had heard the same cries. They knew something was here. He had a choice. He could leave the girl and run. Save himself. But the idea made his stomach turn. He tightened his grip on her and turned away. From the doorway, shots rang out behind him. He sprinted through the ruins, heart pounding. Debris fell around him. Laser blasts sliced the air. He ducked and dodged, shielding the girl with his body. Her small hands clung to him desperately. He needed a plan. He needed a way out. But the city was a maze of broken walls and burning streets. Enemy patrols closed in from all sides. Their shouts filled the night. "Seize the human. Kill him if you must. Bring the child alive." Jace gritted his teeth. They wanted her. Badly. But why? What was so special about this little girl? There was no time to think. He spotted a narrow alley, half hidden behind a collapsed building. Without slowing, he slipped into it. The girl whimpered softly. Jace whispered calming words, hoping to keep her from crying out again. The alley opened into a dead-end street. Trapped. He spun around, searching. To the left, nothing. To the right, a pile of rubble. But under the rubble, a dark hole gaped open. It looked like a tunnel. Maybe an old sewer. Maybe an abandoned maintenance shaft. He had no choice. Jace pushed aside the loose stones with one hand and slipped through the gap, holding the girl tightly against him. The tunnel was narrow and damp. The air smelled of rust and mold. But it was shelter. It was safety. For now. He crawled deeper into the darkness until the sounds of the soldiers faded behind him. Only then did he stop to catch his breath. The girl looked up at him with wide, shining eyes. Jace smiled weakly. "You're safe," he said again. She did not answer, but she reached out and touched his face, her tiny fingers brushing his cheek. Jace closed his eyes for a moment. He had broken every rule. abandoned his orders, risked his life. But when he opened his eyes and saw her small, tired smile, he knew it had been worth it. Somewhere above them the enemy still searched, but down here, hidden in the darkness, a human and an alien child had found each other, and nothing would ever be the same again. Hunted through the ashes, the tunnel was cold and narrow. Broken pipes lined the walls, leaking water that dripped steadily onto the cracked floor. Jace moved slowly, careful not to slip, careful not to make noise. The little alien girl clung to him, her arms tight around his neck. Her small body trembled against his chest. Every so often, she let out a tiny breath that sounded almost like a sob. Behind them, the echoes of angry voices filled the air. The enemy soldiers were not giving up. They searched every alley, every ruin, every shadow. Jace knew it was only a matter of time before they found the tunnel entrance, and if they did, there would be nowhere to run. Jace pressed forward. The tunnel twisted and turned, sloping downward. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Jace's flashlight was broken, so he used the faint light from a glow stick clipped to his belt. The greenish light made everything look strange and ghostly. The girl stirred in his arms. She whispered something in her own language. Jace could not understand her words, but he understood the fear in her voice. "I know," he said softly. "We have to keep moving." The tunnel ended at a metal grate. It was rusted and loose. Jace kicked it gently, and it fell away with a soft clang. Beyond the grate was a larger space, maybe an old maintenance station. It was filled with broken crates and twisted metal. He stepped through, looking around carefully. There was no one here, only silence and the slow drip of water. He set the girl down gently behind a crate. She sat quietly, watching him with wide golden eyes. Jace's heart ached. She was so small, so fragile. How had she survived this long on her own? He moved quickly, searching the room. There had to be something useful here. A radio, a weapon, anything. In the corner, half buried under rubble, he found an old emergency kit. Inside was a battered first aid box, a broken flashlight, and a small radio. Hope sparked in his chest. He picked up the radio, brushing off the dust. It looked dead, but maybe, just maybe, he could fix it. He sat down and began to work, his fingers moving quickly. Wires, batteries, circuits. He had some training, but not much. He whispered to himself as he worked, trying to stay calm. The girl crawled closer, watching him carefully. Outside, the voices grew louder. They were getting closer. Jace's hands moved faster. He twisted wires together. He tapped the side of the radio. Nothing. He shook it gently. Still nothing. He whispered a soft curse under his breath. Then, a spark. The radio crackled weakly to life. Jace grabbed the small microphone. He pressed the button and spoke in a low voice. "This is Sergeant Jace Marlowe. I have a priority rescue. Alien civilian. Under pursuit. Requesting immediate extraction." Repeat. Immediate extraction. He let go of the button and waited. Static filled the air. Seconds dragged by like hours. Then, through the crackling, a voice answered. "Copy, Sergeant. Send coordinates." Jace almost laughed with relief. He gave their location quickly. The voice confirmed. "Pick up in 30 minutes. Hold position." 30 minutes. 30 minutes of survival in a ruined city filled with enemies. It might as well have been a lifetime. He turned to the girl and forced a smile. "They're coming," he said. "We just have to wait." She nodded, understanding even without words. Jace crouched behind a crate, weapon ready. Minutes passed. The girl sat beside him, silent and still. Then, footsteps. They were not far now. Jace's body tensed. He counted the steps, 2 soldiers, maybe 3, moving carefully. Hunting. They entered the tunnel chamber slowly, their guns raised. Jace held his breath. He needed them to pass by, needed them not to see. One soldier moved closer. Too close. Jace tightened his grip on his rifle. The girl whimpered, softly. The soldier froze. He turned toward the sound. His eyes scanned the darkness. They locked on Jace's hiding spot. The soldier raised his weapon. Jace fired first. The shot echoed through the tunnel. The soldier dropped. The others shouted in alarm. No more hiding. Jace grabbed the girl and ran. He sprinted through the maintenance room, weaving between crates and debris. Bullets ripped through the air behind him. Sparks flew from the walls. He saw another tunnel, leading out, and dove into it. The girl clung to him, her face buried against his chest. The tunnel sloped upward. Jace ran, heart pounding. He heard the enemy chasing them, shouting orders, firing wildly. He rounded a corner and stopped. The yow. Tunnel ahead was caved in. Nothing but rubble and stone. Trapped. He spun around. The enemy soldiers were closing in, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Jace raised his rifle. He had one clip left. No backup. No second chances. He set the girl down behind a large chunk of debris. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear and trust. Stay down, he whispered. He stepped forward to face the enemy. Alone. The first soldier appeared, weapon raised. Jace fired. The battle for survival had truly begun. Whispers in the shadows. The tunnel shook with the sound of gunfire. Sparks rained down from broken pipes above. Jace moved quickly, firing short, sharp bursts. He was careful with every shot. He had to be. His bullets were limited. Every missed shot could mean death. The enemy soldiers spread out, trying to trap him. They moved with trained skill, using the shadows to their advantage. Jace knew he could not hold them off forever. He needed a plan. He needed a miracle. He glanced back at the little girl. She was hidden behind a large chunk of stone, her small body pressed tight against it. Her golden eyes peeked out, full of fear and trust. Jace felt a deep surge of protectiveness rise inside him. He ducked as a shot cracked over his head. The wall behind him exploded in a shower of dust and stone. Coughing, he moved to a better position. He needed to keep moving, needed to keep the enemy guessing. He spotted a narrow side tunnel to his left. It was half collapsed, but it might lead somewhere. It might give him a chance. He fired a few covering shots, then sprinted toward the tunnel. Bullets chased him, biting into the stone around him. He reached the girl, scooped her up, and ran into the darkness without looking back. The side tunnel was even tighter than the main one. Jace had to crouch as he moved. The girl clung to him silently, her tiny hands gripping his jacket. The sounds of the enemy faded behind them. For now. The tunnel twisted and turned like a snake. Jace had no idea where it led. He just knew they had to keep moving. After what felt like forever, the tunnel opened into a small underground chamber. It was an old service station, long abandoned. Rusted machines and broken tools were scattered across the floor. Faint light filtered in from cracks in the ceiling. Jace set the girl down gently and checked his surroundings. It was not much, but it would do. At least they could catch their breath. He knelt beside the girl. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, her small face serious. Jace smiled a little. "You're tough, kid." He sat down against the wall, feeling the weight of exhaustion crash over him. His body ached, his wounds throbbed, but he could not rest. Not yet. He pulled out the battered radio he had fixed earlier. He needed to check in, needed to know if rescue was still coming. He tuned it carefully, trying to find the right frequency. Static filled the air. He adjusted the dials, his hands steady despite his tiredness. Then, a voice. "Sergeant Marlowe, this is command. Status?" Jace pressed the button. "Still alive, still have the civilian under pursuit, requesting update." The reply came quickly. "Extraction team en route. 10 minutes. 10 minutes." Jace closed his eyes for a moment. They just had to survive for 10 more minutes. He put the radio down and looked at the girl. She was watching him closely. She said something in her language, her voice soft and musical. He wished he could understand her. But somehow, he felt he knew what she meant. Trust. Hope. Thank you. He smiled and ruffled her hair gently. Then he heard a faint sound. Soft. Careful. Footsteps. The enemy had found the side tunnel. Jace stood up quickly, lifting his rifle. He checked his remaining ammo. Not much left. He looked around the chamber. There were old metal pipes scattered across the floor, broken equipment, sharp pieces of scrap. He started setting traps. He rigged a few pipes to fall if someone stepped in the wrong place. Set up a few pieces of metal to create noise. Anything to slow them down. The girl watched him silently, understanding the danger. When he finished, he picked her up again and moved to the far end of the chamber, finding a good place to defend. The first enemy soldier appeared moments later. He stepped carefully into the chamber, his weapon raised. He did not see the wire Jace had, tied between two pipes. His foot caught it. The pipes fell with a loud crash. The soldier flinched, and Jace fired. The soldier dropped. More enemies rushed in, shouting orders. The battle was on again. Jace fought with everything he had. He used the traps he had set, forcing the enemies to slow down. He fired from cover, moving quickly from spot to spot. But they kept coming. Jace was running out of time. And out of strength. A bullet grazed his arm. Another struck the wall inches from his head. He gritted his teeth and kept fighting. For the girl. For the promise he had made, even if only in his heart. The girl stayed hidden behind a machine, her small hands covering her ears. Jace could see the extraction beacon flashing faintly on his wrist. The team was close. But would they be in time? An enemy soldier threw a grenade. Jace saw it land near the girl. His heart froze. Without thinking, he sprinted toward it. He grabbed the grenade and threw it back toward the enemy soldiers. It exploded in midair, showering the chamber with smoke and debris. Coughing blinded, Jace stumbled toward the girl. He reached her, pulling her close, shielding her with his body. Through the smoke, he saw a figure. Tall, heavily armored. Human. "Sergeant Marlowe," the voice called. "We're here. Move." Jace did not hesitate. He scooped up the girl and ran toward the rescue team, his heart pounding with relief and exhaustion. Behind them, the enemy shouted in rage. But it was too late. They were safe. For now. The price of mercy, the armored human. Soldiers surrounded Jace and the alien girl, forming a protective wall around them. They moved fast, guiding them through the broken tunnels. Jace stumbled a few times, his body near the edge of collapse, but he never let the girl go. He could feel her small hands gripping his jacket, trusting him completely. The extraction team moved with practice speed. Every few seconds, Jace heard the crack of rifles firing behind them, holding off the enemy soldiers who still chased them through the darkness. The team leader, a tall woman with a scar running down her cheek, shouted over the noise, "Extraction point is just ahead. Stay close." Jace nodded, even though he could barely see straight. His whole body screamed with pain. His wounds burned. His breath came in short, painful gasps. But he kept moving. They burst into an open underground hangar where an old transport shuttle waited with its engines rumbling. The doors were open, lights flooding the dusty air. Salvation was within reach, but so were the enemy soldiers. They poured into the hangar from the other side, dozens of them, shouting and firing. Jace felt a bullet whip past his ear. Another slammed into the wall near his head. The human soldiers returned fire, holding the enemy back. "Go!" the team leader shouted. "Get the civilian aboard!" Jace ran for the shuttle. The girl clutched tightly in his arms. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw him. An enemy scout. Young, barely older than a boy. He had slipped through the firefight, sneaking along the shadows of the hangar. He raised his weapon, aiming not at Jace but at the girl. Jace acted on instinct. He swung around, placing himself between the scout and the girl. The scout hesitated. Jace stared at him across the smoky hangar. They were close enough to see each other's faces. The scout's hand shook. His finger hovered over the trigger. He looked terrified, desperate. Jace knew he could raise his own rifle. He could fire first. He had every right to, but he did not. Instead, he spoke. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. The scout blinked. confusion flashing across his alien features. Behind them, the battle raged. Screams and gunfire filled the air. But in that moment, there was only silence between them. The scout's weapon lowered slightly. Jace took a slow, careful step backward toward the shuttle. The scout watched him, torn between duty and doubt. Then, with a final shaky breath, the scout turned and disappeared into the smoke. Jace let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned and sprinted the last few steps to the shuttle. Strong hands grabbed him, pulling him aboard. The doors slammed shut behind them. The shuttle lifted off with a roar, shaking the ground below. Jace collapsed into a seat, the girl still wrapped in his arms. For a long moment he could not move, could not think. He had survived. The girl was, safe. He had done the impossible. The team leader knelt in front of him. "Sergeant," she said, her voice softer now. "You did good." Jace just nodded, too tired to speak. The girl looked up at him with her golden eyes shining. She reached into a small pouch tied around her waist and pulled out a tiny glowing stone. It pulsed with a soft blue light, warm and alive. She placed it in Jace's hand, curling his fingers around it. He stared at the stone, confused. The team leader smiled faintly. "That's a life stone," she said. "A sacred gift. It means you are part of her clan now, part of her family." Jace looked at the girl in shock. Family. The word hit him harder than any bullet. He had saved her. But in her eyes, he had done much more. He had given her hope. He had given her a future. The shuttle rocked slightly as it climbed higher into the atmosphere. Through the window, Jace could see the ruined world falling away beneath them. The battle still raged far below, but it was no longer his fight. His fight had been for one small life, and he had won. He leaned back in the seat, the life stone warm, against his palm, and closed his eyes. But deep in his heart he knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. Because somewhere out there, others would learn what he had done. Some would see him as a hero. Others would see him as a threat. The price of mercy was never cheap, and Jace Marlowe had just paid it in full. A desperate flight. The shuttle raced through the sky, leaving the burning city far behind. Inside, everything was tense and silent except for the low hum of the engines. Jace sat strapped to a bench, the small alien girl still in his arms. Her head rested against his chest, and he could feel her breathing, slow and steady now, not trembling with fear like before. Jace stared blankly at the shuttle walls. His body hurt everywhere. His arm was wrapped in a quick bandage. His ribs ached every time he breathed. But none of it mattered. He had the girl. She was safe. The other soldiers moved around quietly, checking weapons, scanning monitors. Their faces were grim. The team leader, the woman with the scar, sat across from Jace, watching him with thoughtful eyes. "We're not safe yet," she said after a while. Jace blinked, his mind slow to catch up. "What do you mean?" he asked. She leaned forward. "They're tracking us. They want the girl back. Badly." Jace looked down at the tiny figure in his arms. The girl shifted slightly but did not wake. She trusted him completely now. The thought made his chest tighten. "Why?" Jace asked. "Why her?" The team leader hesitated, then said, "She's important. More than you know. She's not just any civilian. She's royal blood." Jace's breath caught. Royalty. He looked at the girl again with new eyes. The delicate horns, the golden eyes, the way the enemy soldiers had risked everything to capture her. It all made sense now. "They want her alive," the leader continued. "She's the future of her people." Jace closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the truth settle heavy on his shoulders. He hadn't just saved a child. He had saved a symbol, a future, a hope for an entire race. And now powerful enemies would stop at nothing to get her back. The shuttle suddenly rocked violently. Alarms blared. "Brace!" the pilot shouted. Everyone grabbed onto the nearest straps or handles. Jace pulled, the girl close, shielding her with his body. A bright explosion lit up the sky outside the shuttle windows. Missile hit the left wing. The pilot called. "We're losing altitude." The team leader cursed and moved to the front. "Get us down in one piece." The shuttle shuddered and groaned, metal screaming under the strain. Jace held tight, feeling the terrifying drop as they fell from the sky. Outside, the land rushed up to meet them. Then a hard impact. The world flipped upside down. Pain exploded through Jace's body as he was thrown against his harness. The girl cried out softly, but he held her tight, never letting go. After a long, grinding moment, the shuttle skidded to a stop. Silence. Only the crackling of fires and the soft groans of the wounded filled the air. Jace unstrapped himself and staggered to his feet. The girl clung to him, frightened but unharmed. The team leader shouted orders, getting everyone moving. "Grab what you can. We need to move. They'll be coming for us." Jace slung a rifle over his shoulder and followed the others out into the wreckage. They had crashed in a dense forest. Tall black trees loomed all around, their twisted branches reaching out like claws. Smoke rose from the shuttle, marking their location like a beacon. They had minutes, maybe less, before the enemy found them. "We head north," the leader said. "There's a hidden outpost a few miles from here. If we make it, we can call for another pickup." Jace nodded grimly. He shifted the girl onto his back, tying a makeshift sling to carry her. His wounds screamed in protest, but he ignored them. She was light. He could carry her. He would carry her as far as he needed. They moved quickly through the forest, staying low, avoiding open spaces. The soldiers spread out, scanning the shadows for signs of pursuit. The girl whispered softly in Jace's ear. He could not understand her words, but he understood the feeling. She was afraid. So was he. But he would not let her see it. He would be strong for both of them. After what felt like hours, they paused by a small stream to catch their breath. Jace knelt beside the water, letting the girl sip a little from his canteen. She smiled at him, a tired, grateful smile that broke his heart. Then the sound came, distant at first, a low, rumbling growl. Vehicles, enemy hunters. The team leader's face went pale. "They're closer than we thought," she said. "We have to move. Now." Jace lifted the girl again and followed the team into the trees. The forest seemed endless. Every step was a battle. Branches scratched his face and arms. Roots tried to trip him. His wounds bled slowly, staining his uniform, but he never stopped. He would not stop, not until she was safe. They crossed rocky hills and muddy valleys. They moved under the cover of fallen trees and thick bushes. They stayed silent even when exhaustion threatened to break them. Behind them, the sound of engines grew louder, closer. Too close. They were running out of time. And Jace knew, deep in his heart, that the real test was still ahead. The last stand, the forest grew thicker around them, the trees like black pillars cutting out the sky. The air smelled of burning fuel and wet earth. Every step was harder than the last. Jace's legs felt like they were made of stone, but he refused to slow down. The girl was silent on his back, trusting him completely, her little hands clutching his jacket. The team leader moved ahead, guiding them through the dense underbrush. The other soldiers stayed close, weapons ready, eyes scanning the shadows. They all knew the same terrible truth. They were being hunted. Behind them, the sound of engines and heavy boots grew louder. The enemy forces were closing in fast. Soon there would be no more running. Jace could feel it. The inevitable was coming. They reached a clearing near the top of a rocky hill. From here they could see the hidden outpost in the distance, a small cluster of buildings half buried in the forest. A faint blue light blinking from its communication tower. So close, but not close enough. The first enemy vehicles roared into view at the bottom of the hill. Sleek armored transports with mounted cannons. Soldiers poured out of them, moving in tight formation. Dozens, maybe more. The team leader cursed under her breath. "We make our stand here," she said. "We hold them off until the girl reaches the outpost." She looked at Jace. "You're the fastest. You take her. Get her to safety." Jace opened his mouth to argue, but she shook her head firmly. You're her protector now. She trusts you. Jace swallowed hard. He wanted to stay and fight, wanted to stand with them. But he knew she was right. His duty was to the girl. He shifted her more securely onto his back and nodded. I'll get her there, he promised. The soldiers formed a defensive line at the top of the hill. They set up what little equipment they had left. A few barricades, a heavy machine gun, some mines. It would not be enough, but they would make it enough. Jace looked down at the girl. She was awake now, her golden eyes wide but brave. She reached up and touched the lifestone hanging around his neck, the gift she had given him. He covered her hand with his own. We're almost there, he whispered. The first shots rang out. The battle had begun. Jace turned and sprinted across the clearing, heading for the outpost as fast as he could. Bullets cracked through the air behind him. Explosions shook the ground. He didn't dare look back. He ran through the trees, heart hammering, lungs burning. He could hear enemy soldiers shouting behind him, hear the whine of engines as vehicles tried to circle around and cut him off. He pushed harder. Branches slapped against his face. Roots snagged at his boots. But he never slowed. The girl clung to him, whispering soft words he could not understand, but that gave him strength. Ahead, the outpost loomed closer. He could see figures moving. Human soldiers, alerted by the signal, almost there, almost safe. Then a sharp pain tore through his side. He staggered but did not fall. He knew he had been hit, but he did not stop. He could not stop. He broke into the open, running straight for the outpost gates. Soldiers rushed forward, waving him in. The gates swung open just enough for him to slip through. Strong hands grabbed him, pulling him inside. Jace collapsed to his knees. The girl still clutched to his chest. He gasped for air, pain washing over him in waves. Medics rushed to his side, working quickly. But Jace's eyes were only on the girl. She looked up at him, her small hands on his face, her golden eyes shining with something pure and powerful. Gratitude, hope, love. The team leader's voice crackled through the radio on Jace's vest. Extraction complete, she said. Hold the line. Then the signal went silent. Jace knew what that meant. The soldiers on the hill had made their stand, and they had paid the price. His chest tightened painfully, but he forced himself to stay focused. The girl was safe. Because of them. Because of all of them. He sat against the wall of the outpost. The girl curled up beside him and watched as human forces prepared to defend their position. The battle was not over. But for the first time in a long while, Jace felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. They would survive. They would rebuild. And thanks to one small act of kindness, the bond between two worlds had begun. A bond sealed not by treaties or politics, but by trust, by sacrifice, and by love. The gratitude of a nation. The days passed in a blur. After the rescue, Jace was taken to the outpost's medical wing. They treated his wounds, cleaned the blood and dirt from his skin, and gave him clean clothes. But no matter how much rest they ordered, Jace could not stop thinking about the little alien girl. She stayed close to him always. Wherever he went, she followed, silent and watchful. She ate when he ate. She slept curled up beside his bed. Sometimes she would take his hand in hers without a word, as if making sure he was still real. Jace found comfort in her presence, and he knew deep inside that they were connected now, bound by something stronger than blood. One morning, the team leader came to his room. She looked different, dressed in formal gear, her armor polished and sharp. It's time, she said simply. Jace stood up, wincing slightly from the pain that still lingered in his ribs. He picked up the girl, who immediately wrapped her arms around his neck. They followed the team leader through the outpost gates into the bright morning sun. Outside, a large transport ship waited. It was sleek and silver, marked with strange symbols Jace could not read. Alien soldiers in shining armor stood in two long lines, their heads bowed low as Jace passed between them. At the top of the ramp stood a figure, tall, regal, cloaked in deep blue robes that shimmered like water. The alien king. His face was lined, with age and sorrow, but his golden eyes burned with strength. He stepped forward slowly, every movement filled with deep purpose. Jace stopped at the base of the ramp, the girl still in his arms. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the girl wriggled down from Jace's arms and ran to the king. She threw herself into his embrace, her tiny hands clutching his robes. The king knelt and held her tightly. For the first time, Jace saw tears glistening in the old warrior's eyes. After a long moment, the king stood and turned to Jace. He spoke in his own language, words full of power and emotion. Then a translator device buzzed softly at Jace's ear, turning the words into simple English. "You have done what few would dare," the king said. "You saved my daughter when all hope was lost. You shielded her with your own body. You fought for her future. For that you have earned the gratitude of my people. Forever." Jace felt a lump rise in his throat. He opened his mouth, unsure what to say. The king stepped forward and placed something heavy around Jace's neck. A pendant, shaped like the life stone the girl had given him, but larger, more intricate. It pulsed with a soft golden light. The soldiers around them raised their weapons in salute, a sound like thunder rolling across the field. The girl came back to Jace and took his hand again, her eyes bright with happiness. The king smiled. "You are part of us now," he said, "our brother, our family." The girl nodded firmly, tugging on Jace's hand as if to say, "See, it's true?" Jace laughed quietly, a sound that felt strange after so much fear and pain. He knelt in front of the girl and looked into her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly. She beamed at him, her small face shining like the sun. The king gestured toward the transport ship. "Come with us," he said. "We will heal your wounds. You will see our world, and you will see what your kindness has saved." Jace hesitated only for a moment. Then he nodded. He followed the king and his daughter up the ramp, the alien soldiers parting, to let them pass. As the ship lifted off, Jace looked out the window one last time at the battered world below, the place where everything had begun. He had come here as a soldier, sent to fight a war he barely understood. He was leaving as something else, a protector, a hero, a brother. He sat beside the little girl as the stars stretched out before them. She leaned against his side, yawning sleepily. Jace smiled and closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. He had saved one small life, and in doing so, he had saved a future. And somewhere out there, across the stars, a new story was just beginning. A story of hope, a story of trust, a story of two worlds, bound forever by one simple, powerful act of kindness.